can we please talk about the UFC for like 10, 15 minutes? If you're new to this show, welcome. Glad to have you. If you're watching on Patreon, even better. Thank you very much for the support. And basically, in a nutshell, all I'm going to do is quickly run through. There's a couple of events that I need to recap, that being UFC Vegas 29 and UFC Vegas 30, because there were some complications last week and I didn't do a wrap-up show. So, if you know me, you know that I like to play some terrible bets. I'll be reviewing my terrible bets, see which ones came off, see which ones didn't. One event was distinctly better than the other, spoiler alert. And then I'm going to run through the news. There is some huge news, both physically in the participants of the news and in the news of the basic magnitude of the news itself. So, let's start off by reviewing my terrible bets and have a look at UFC Vegas 29. This happened a couple of weeks ago, and one of my bets that actually came off pretty well, Matt the Immortal Brown. I thought he had one more good knockout left in him, because honestly, it's like it was more on the competence of his competition. Diego Lima, with respect, is not the same as some of the young killers that has been causing Matt Brown problems recently. Okay, he's much more like skill-wise at like a Ben Saunders kind of level, and you know, Matt Brown knocked Ben Saunders out. So in my head, I was like, stands to reason, like +6 on the Matt Brown knockout. That is a really good price, and you know what, he delivered, and it was an excellent knockout. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It's well worth watching. Who doesn't love watching a good knockout? But yeah, so great price, great bet, normally terrible, but I'll take it. A broken clock is right once a day, twice a day. Twice a day? Yeah, that's right, isn't it? But a broken clock is right twice a day, I think. Either way, what's next for Matt Brown? Matt Brown, he says that he's not retiring. You know, he's still going to keep going. He's not getting a Diaz, with respect. That's probably not happening. Maybe a rematch with Lawler might be on the cards. I'll tell you what fight really interests me. A certain Mike Perry, he needs a fight. Come on, man. Matt the Immortal Brown against Mike the Nutcase Perry. Who wouldn't want to see that? You look at me with a straight face. You look into my eyes and you tell me that that is not a great fight. Huh? You can't, can you? Because it's a great fight. It's a banger. Make that matchup. You're welcome. Get it done. So, we also had Vera versus Grant on that card as well, which I had my eye on as just a really, really good fight to watch. And I was completely right in that respect. It was fight of the night, and rightly so. Congratulations to both guys, because it was a phenomenal fight. I did take Davey Grant to get the win because the odds were really favourable. There was value there because I thought it was a closer fight than the odds were saying, and it was quite a close fight, especially the first round. Davey Grant clearly won that. I do not know how one of the judges scored that first round to Davey Grant. Now, it doesn't make a difference to the outcome of the fight, and I'm glad that it didn't, right? However, when you look at those scorecards, you do have to scratch your head and think, how did that judge arrive at that conclusion? That's all I'm saying, right? It didn't make a difference to the outcome of the fight. Marlon Vera clearly won the second 2 rounds, and it was an absolutely fantastic fight. They were both winners in my eyes, really. But that first round, Davey Grant clearly won. There is no universe in which Marlon Vera won that round. So how did one of those judges arrive at the conclusion that Vera won that? I would like to know what they saw. Join, they're either insane or they weren't watching the fight. Or, you know, I don't know which is worse, honestly. But either way, congrats to Vera. He fully deserved the win. Not the first round though. It was fully deserving of fight of the night. I'm glad they both got 75 grand as well. It was excellent. If you haven't seen that fight, do go back and watch it. You'll be in for an absolute treat. One that's probably not worth a rewatch so much is, oh, sorry, I forgot to say that I'll put my matchmaking hat back on. I might actually get an actual hat that says matchmaking on it. That'd be pretty fun. Anyway, the matchmaking hat for me, I think the next for Marlon Vera has got to be Cody Garbrandt, hasn't it? Because Cody Garbrandt's got to bounce back from that loss against Rob Font. Marlon Vera, he's getting a bit of a name for himself now. He can easily kind of find himself headlining a fight night. And Cody's already at that headliner level, has been for a while. That fight makes sense. Stylistically as well, come on, that's going to be a fun fight. They're both going to go there looking, to strike with each other, and it should be really fun. So, yeah, make that fight happen. As I said, one fight that maybe isn't worth going back to watch was Olenek versus Spivak. Now, I had Olenek in this one purely because I didn't like Spivak as such a heavy favourite, because Spivak is perfectly beatable, and there were ways for Olenek to win that fight. He just didn't on that night. So if I was forced to make that bet again, I would, because I'm not taking Spivak as a 1.44 favourite, because he's not 1.44 favourite good. Does that make sense? But either way, it was a decent if unspectacular performance from Spivak. Who does he go after next? He put together a few wins. Put my matchmaking hat back on. Matchmaking hat says that I think he needs to maybe take on Volkov. Volkov needs to bounce back from his loss to Garn at the weekend. They're not like a ridiculous amount apart in the rankings. I think it's like, I don't know, 7 and like 12 or something like that. But either way, that one could be an interesting fight for both of them. It's a winnable fight for both of them. Make that one happen. We also had the Korean Zombie taking on Dan Ige at UFC Vegas 29, and this was another one that I thought it was easy money really, because when you looked at all I did was put money that the fight would go the distance, and you got plus 210 on that, which was good, right? Because let's be fair, Dan Ige has never been finished, okay, and he's not a finisher himself, with respect. So in my head, I'm just like, well, you know, obviously that fight is going the distance. Featherweight fights often do. The lighter weight classes often go the distance because they don't quite have the stopping power that the heavier weight classes have, right? So yeah, got that one right as well. So I was very happy with that. That was a decent bet, the last one for a while, I think. And the Korean Zombie looked absolutely fantastic. He looked really good. And I'll go put my matchmaking hat back on again, because I'll tell you who the Korean Zombie should fight next, and that is one Mr. Edson Barbosa. They need to make that fight at lightweight, because Edson Barbosa is an absolute killer, man. And imagine those styles, like the Zombie walking forwards and trying to stand with Edson Barbosa as he cuts him down with kicks, and they're both standing and trading. You tell me that is not a fantastic fight. Make that fight happen. I will pay to see that all day, every day, because they both need big fights next. Edson Barbosa is a big name. Like, the Korean Zombie is a big name, and style-wise, the fight works. All of it works. It just works. It's a delicious fight. Just put it together. Make it happen. Then we move on to UFC Vegas 30, which was not a good night for me betting-wise, but I'll tell you who it was worse for betting-wise, and that was Mr. Justin James, because he put his entire fight purse on himself to win. And it went to the judges. Went to a split decision. He was on the wrong end of it. So, unfortunately, yeah, he lost his entire fight purse. His judges lost all their money as well. His coaches lost all their money as well. He keeps on saying that it doesn't bother him. It's like, come on, man. It bothers you a little bit. Just a little bit. I mean, like, one of the biggest bets I've ever put on. I don't bet a lot of money because, you know, I'm not a high roller by any means, but I put 100 quid on Michael Bisping to beat George St. Pierre, and I still believe that 8 times out of 10, Michael Bisping would beat George St. Pierre at middleweight. Like, and he was really competitive in that fight, and the thing is like, so was George St. Pierre. I was so sure that Bisping would win though, and that was the day that I realised I wasn't okay with losing 100 quid. Right? I'm not okay with it. I don't bet in those amounts anymore. Woo, hell no. Because I learned my lesson. I learned it good, you know? But Justin James, 25 grand. 25 grand in the hole. Oof. You're telling me that doesn't bother you at all? Oh, maybe you've been hit in the head one too many times, because that should bother you. It should bother you just a smidge. Just a little bit. Anyway, who's next for Rosa? Rosa, it wasn't exactly a marquee performance from Rosa either. He's a very, very, very good grappler, which is why I think that maybe he should take on Alex Caceres, because it would be the classic striker versus grappler. They're not too far away from each other in the rankings. Should be a decent enough fight, but it's not one that anyone's really going to give a fuck about, but it will perhaps like move them forwards in their career. Then you had Ovince St. Preux against Tanner Boser. Well, the first thing I'll say is that from the other angle, it wasn't a fence grab. It looked like Tanner Boser pulled himself up, like we're using the fence. He didn't. He actually had a closed fist. But I see why DC thought it was a fence grab, because from the front camera angle, the only one that we had at the time, it looked like a clear fence grab. It was only when they did the reverse angle you could see he was using a closed fist. However, OSP was in sleepy mode, wasn't he? Because I did say, look, Ovince St. Preux is a nightmare to bet on. He's a nightmare to bet against. Every time you bet on him, he'll come up short. Every time you bet against him, he'll get that Von Flute choke. So it's just, I'm not going to bet on any of his fights anymore. For or against, it pisses me off, man. Would you just, for God's sake, OSP, could you decide whether you're going to be good or bad? For the love of God. Tanner Boser. I don't know what's next for OSP, Bellator probably, but Tanner Boser, what is next for you? I heard that there's another former light heavyweight like OSP that wants to have another go at heavyweight. He's had one go at heavyweight already. His name is Alexander Gustafsson. I think that if he wants another welcome into the heavyweight division, I think that Tanner Boser is the man to do it. And I think that Tanner Boser kicks his ass, if I'm honest. Like, Gustafsson looked terrible at heavyweight. He looked even worse than OSP. He just looked out of shape and just looked like he couldn't be bothered to do the work. And that's why, and yeah, it was just, it was ridiculous. Can you believe that Gustafsson was a favourite against Verdum? I made some money that night. Can you believe that they had Gustafsson as a favourite against Fabricio Verdum at heavyweight? That is insulting. That was just pure disrespect to Fabricio Verdum there. Like, unbelievable. But yeah, anyway, that was another night, another story. Let's move on. The main event was Ciryl Gane against Alexander Volkov, and this one capped off a very bad night of betting for me, because at the moment I'm 0-2 and I was 0-3 on the night because tell you what, I was genuinely surprised at how Gane was able to control the distance. I thought it would be the other way around. I thought it would be Volkov controlling the distance since he's the bigger, longer man and his striking's like really good. But I'll tell you what it is. I think that Gane's speed actually scares people. I think it forces him to be gun shy, because you saw the same thing against Rosenstruik. Like, it just seemed like Rosenstruik was afraid to pull the trigger. And I think it's because they get a taste of the speed of Ciryl Gane and they're like, how do I hit this guy without getting hit? I think it puts the fear of God into him. I really do, because it looked like Volkov just looked tentative the entire time. And it just allows Gane to just put combinations together, to just fight at his own pace and just to cruise to a victory, which is what he did. And I'm not going to say what's next for Ciryl Gane, because if we swiftly go into the news, the biggest news is that Ciryl Gane is going to fight Derek Lewis for the interim heavyweight title at UFC 265. Now, this has caused a lot of controversy, because obviously Francis Ngannou is quite upset. He said, but with respect, the UFC asked him to be ready for UFC 265. And I'll tell you why they wanted him ready for 265. The heavyweight division is the 265-pound division. At UFC 265, they want the heavyweight title to be on the line. Francis Ngannou said that date didn't work for him, so the UFC were like, fine, okay, we're going to put together an interim title fight. You know what? The interim title means nothing, but it does mean they can put it on their posters. For UFC 265, the 265-pound title is on the line. That is the simple answer as to why they're doing it. I get it. I get it from a marketing standpoint as well. I also get it from a standpoint that Dana White he's trying to take a hard line here, because from what I heard, Francis Ngannou was also making rumblings saying that he didn't want the Derek Lewis fight or whatever. He wanted to wait for John Jones. Well, unfortunately, you're in the UFC. You're not in boxing. You don't call the shots. In the UFC, the promoter calls the shots. And if they want John Jones is not going to get that 30 million payday, and I'll tell you why. It's because that fight, Jones versus Ngannou, is not as big a fight as people are making it out to be. Like, if you're watching this, you're probably an MMA fan. I'm an MMA fan, right? I want to see Francis Ngannou versus John Jones at heavyweight. I can't wait to see that fight. The problem is, neither one of those guys has ever topped more than 900,000 pay-per-view buys. And I think one of those was with the help of Daniel Cormier for John Jones, right? So there is nothing in either of their histories that says that fight will sell like an extraordinary amount of pay-per-view buys. So why would they pay John Jones an extraordinary amount of money? They wouldn't. Right? Because the problem is it's do they appeal to casual fans? As much as people throw casual fans around as an insult, it's casual fans that built the UFC. Do you know what I mean? You don't get those big pay-per-views like Conor McGregor ones and Brock Lesnar ones without having the casual fans. And the reason that those guys are able to do that is because they transcend the UFC, right? You walk down the street and you ask 10 people who John Jones is, right? Maybe 2, maybe 3 people will know who the fuck you're talking about. You walk down the street and you ask 10 people who Francis Ngannou is. Again, 2, maybe 3 people will know who the fuck you're talking about. You walk down the street and you ask who Conor McGregor is, and 7 out of 10 people will be able to tell you roughly who he is. You go down the street and you ask 10 people who Brock Lesnar is, and at least 5 people will probably be able to tell you who he is. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of... They need to wait until Ngannou has transcended into popular culture, because Ngannou could. He's got that kind of look, he's got that kind of presence, but he needs more fights, he needs more violence under his name. He needs to be like promoted more outside of the UFC, if that makes sense, if they want to bring in those big casual numbers. But as it stands right now, Jones versus Ngannou does not top 1 million buys. There, I said it. It doesn't. And that is why Dana White is not going to pay John Jones $15-30 million for a purse for that fight, because it's just not economically viable. And yeah, I'm not going to get into the whole fighter pay thing, because people keep assuming that the fighters are underpaid. The fact of the matter is, none of us know. Unless you have the profit and loss sheets for the UFC and you have detailed analytics of what comes in and what they go and what they spend on kind of growth and expansion and video editors. You've got to bear in mind, they put on a show every week. That ain't cheap. Right? But none of us have that information. But I don't go around assuming that the fighters are underpaid or overpaid or paid the right amount. But a lot of people just go and cast the aspersion that all the fighters are underpaid. That might not be true. You don't know that. Anyway, moving on. Gane versus Derek Lewis. It's a fun fight. It is a fun fight. It has a potential to be a boring one, though, if I'm honest, because I think that, again, as I mentioned, Cyril Gane, his speed makes people gun shy. And I do feel like there's a chance that that could happen on that night, because it seems, because realistically, Cyril Gane is going to be on the outside, he's going to win with volume, and Derek Lewis is going to try and counter him. He's going to try and look to counter him one time with that big power. And that could make for a stale fight. However, UFC 265, you have to have the 265-pound belt on the line. It's that simple. But I will run I don't know who I'm picking in that one. Probably Cyril Gane by decision. But no, you can't count out the power of the Black Beast. I'm going to have a look at what the odds are. If there's some tasty odds on Derek Lewis to get the knockout, I'm definitely having a go on that. Who wouldn't? Come on, man. Ariel Helwani has left ESPN. Now, I think that, to be fair, I saw that coming, because it seems like he's made the move for his own happiness. He's always had that kind of independent streak in him, hasn't he? And this is probably a really good move for Ariel. He's an excellent journalist. He's brilliant. He's been a staple for such a long time. But you know, he was always better on the MMA Hour. The MMA Hour was his baby, and he actually said on the BYM podcast that he did miss being part of the team, and just. More or less, at the AMA Hour, he writes his own ticket, doesn't he? It's his baby. So, yeah, he's probably right to go back to him. And he's, like I said, he's always been more independent. He's been independent. He's a bit of a rogue. I mean, that's why the UFC blackballed him, which they were right to do, to be fair. Because as much as I love Ariel Helwani, he said that he had a duty to report that Brock Lesnar was coming back for UFC 200. The UFC did ask all the journalists that, can you sit on this until after the 199 event, after we've run the trailer, because we're doing this big reveal. And and to be fair, they give them all the access, they give them all the passes and that. And if Ariel was going to turn around and just go, no, fuck you, I'm going to drop the news anyway and ruin your big reveal, it's kind of like, yeah, they might ban you then, dude. They might do that. So yeah, I don't really blame the UFC for doing that. But also, I don't blame Ariel Helwani for being upset that they blackballed him. Either way, good for him. Hector Lombard smacks some sense into Lorenzo Hunt. BKFC, I'll tell you what, the more I watch of this, the more I'm beginning to like it. I really do. Like Hector Lombard in bare knuckle boxing, great. It was a decent enough fight as well against Joe Riggs. He won the cruiserweight title. But then after the fight, Lorenzo Hunt gets into his face. He gives him the old 1-2 for his trouble. It's good. Do you know what I mean? A bit of controversy. Who doesn't like a bit of controversy in bare knuckle boxing? Yeah, I want to see more of that. That was fun. It's good. So yeah, then we've got the troll of the week. So we've got some good ones here. Let me see if I can just find them. And there we go. So, right. First one I'm going to look at is Robbie Lawler. So it's right. You see this Wolverine one around quite a lot. You know, Wolverine is in the old X-Men cartoon, and he's looking sad and looking at this picture, kind of reminiscing. And this one, he's reminiscing about Robbie Lawler being the welterweight champ. And it's like, yeah, that is happy memories, isn't it? I'll tell you what, I don't know if I've been... Between him and Michael Bisping, I'm not sure who I was happier watching get the belt. Because I've been following Robbie Lawler for a long time. I've been watching... literally, the first fight I ever watched was Robbie Lawler against Tiki. And actually, when I met Lawler... I said that to him. He was like, oh, damn, you got, that's a long time ago. You got a long memory. But yeah, so Robbie Lawler is more or less what piqued my interest into the sport in the first place all those years ago. And to watch him come good and get that belt after being in Strikeforce for so many years, and yeah, it was brilliant. And yeah, but yeah, this is funny, Joey. Wolverine clearly feels the same way. So yeah, next one we've got Conor McGregor. He's basically doing this usual thing of trolling on Twitter. It's just like, I'll be back in a few weeks, my sweetheart. Just going to boost the man up, tell the kids daddy loves them. And yeah, it's vintage Conor, isn't it? He's just I do like that the Dustin Poirier McGregor 3 is looking to be far more contentious than the first one. I didn't like all the lovey-dovey, oh, you have some whiskey, I'll have some hot sauce, all that bollocks. No, I want you to be under each other's skin, in each other's faces. I want to see the drama. I want to see the conflict. And it looks like we're going to get that in the build-up to this next one. So I'm really, really looking forward to the rematch, actually. I don't know who, Joey, it's going to be hard to imagine. I mean, to be fair, if one of the best case scenarios, if Conor loses, because then they'll do the Diaz trilogy. But yeah, either way, Conor is starting to get back to his old trolly self. And you know what? I think that is excellent for the sport. And it should be really fun. This next one, Kevin Lee is obviously withdrawn with a rib injury. And so now it's just like this guy's just put him like morphing slowly into Tyrone Woodley. Because obviously, Woodley was always injured in that. So yeah, no, it's just somebody having a bit of fun with Photoshop there. And the last troll of the week, this one, it really made me laugh. It's just a little kind of bit of text that someone's put together. I did see it on Facebook. It's like, it's crazy that when you're a kid, you think that £100 is a lot of money, right? And when you're a teenager, you think that £1,000 is a lot of money. And when you're an adult, you think that £1 million is a lot of money. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I still don't know how Rumble Johnson made £170. It is a mystery, and I'm going to leave you on that. That's all the trolls of the week. That's all the news of the week. And if you've enjoyed the content, please do me a favour, like and subscribe. And if you really want to support me, just please head over to the Patreon. We do some extra videos, early access, all that kind of good stuff over there. So until the fight this week, if there are any, I think there are. I don't know. I need to look into that. I really need to pay closer attention. But in any event, keep all those odds long and keep those bets terrible.